Most Americans have spent their entire lives believing that Social Security is a guaranteed pillar of retirement, a sacred promise from the government that if you work hard, pay your taxes, and play by the rules, then one day the system will be there for you when you need it. That's the story we've been told, generation after generation. But behind that comforting illusion lies a darker reality that many people are either unaware of or refuse to confront. Social Security isn't the bulletproof safety net it was once made out to be. In fact, some would argue it's become the biggest long-term scam played on the American people, sold as security but operating more like a government-run Ponzi scheme that's teetering on the edge of collapse. When the Social Security Act was passed in the mid-1930s during the Great Depression, it was hailed as a revolutionary step in protecting the most vulnerable. Back then, there were dozens of workers for every retiree. People didn't live as long, and the program had more than enough to cover its promises. Fast forward to today, and the ratio of workers to retirees has shrunk dramatically. Life expectancy has increased, the number of retirees has ballooned. And the trust fund, which is the reservoir for paying benefits, is projected to run dry in a matter of years. Once that happens, the government has no plan other than slashing benefits or raising taxes, both of which will hit younger generations the hardest. The system depends entirely on current workers funding current retirees. What most people don't realize is that the money taken out of your paycheck every week isn't going into some personal savings account with your name on it. It goes straight to the federal government, which immediately spends it. If anything's left over, it's used to buy government bonds, which are basically IOUs the government writes to itself. So when politicians say the trust fund is full of assets, what they really mean is that it's full of debt. That debt will only be paid back if future taxpayers cover it. That's not savings. That's a cycle of borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. What makes the situation worse is the way the program is pitched to the public. Politicians from both parties continue to push the idea that Social Security is untouchable, untamperable, and unbreakable, even as its financial foundation crumbles. They use it as a political football every election cycle, promising not to cut benefits and refusing to make meaningful reforms, all while ignoring basic math. The government's own reports admit the program is on an unsustainable path. But instead of having an honest, national conversation about the future of retirement, we get recycled sound bites and short-term fixes. Younger Americans, especially those in their 20s and 30s, are being forced to pay into a system that many of them know will never return the same value. They're watching a chunk of their paycheck disappear every month into a government program they don't trust, and many are quietly realizing that they'll have to save for retirement on their own if they want any real security. But try to opt out of Social Security, and you'll quickly find out it's not voluntary. You're locked into the system whether you believe in it or not. The media rarely questions the fundamentals of the program. Instead, the conversation is usually about protecting it from so-called threats or preserving it as is, without ever discussing whether the structure itself makes sense anymore. Ask yourself why a system designed in the early 20th century is still treated as sacred in a world where the entire economy has changed. Pensions are gone. Jobs are mobile. People freelance, switch careers, work part-time, or run side hustles. But Social Security remains rigid, outdated, and inflexible. Then there's the issue of fairness. If you die before retirement age, all those contributions vanish into the system with no personal return. If you live a long life, you might break even or come out ahead. But what happens if you're somewhere in the middle? And what about people with lower life expectancy due to poverty or chronic illness? They're essentially subsidizing those who live longer, often from wealthier backgrounds. That's not equality. That's redistribution, dressed up as retirement insurance. Some defenders say Social Security is still better than nothing. Maybe it is, but that doesn't mean it's working the way it should. A true safety net should be transparent, solvent, and adaptable to the modern world. What we have is a legacy program riddled with political cowardice and fiscal denial. And until Americans demand an honest reckoning with the numbers, the structure, and the future of the system, we'll be stuck in a loop of promises that can't be kept and a false sense of security that will shatter when it's too late to fix.